Look at all those ships! I wonder if we could take one!
Eggman must be really rich. Wonder if he'd hire us.
This game has gotten a lot of attention. When it first came out, it got almost universally fantastic reviews, but over the years it's become almost universally hated. Some think it's the best 3D Sonic game ever made, and then some think it's the worst. For me, it's okay. It isn't deep or complicated, it isn't groundbreaking, it's just a good time waster when you're waiting for something else to happen. It is fun, but not as fun as a Sonic game should be. When I saw the early trailers for this game, I was excited. I thought it was gonna be awesome, but I was just judging by its flashy visuals at that point. Basically, you don't play as one character. You play as teams of 3, frequently switching between team members that are specifically equipped for certain situations. Speed-type characters like Sonic and Shadow run a lot, flying-type characters like Tails and Rouge won't fly, and power-type characters like Knuckles break stuff. All 3 teammates are needed for their own little things, and you'll be switching dozens of times to get through each level. A lot of people hate this game because of this. Apparently this incredibly simple concept is too much for their teeny-weeny little brains to handle, so they have a hard time getting anywhere. Well then I guess all those stupid signs that tell you which character to play as when it should be obvious, and those gates that automatically make you switch upon passing through them are made just for those guys. I don't know why, but the 3-character thing never bothered me. I liked this game because of that and found it interesting. I don't think Sega should ever make a Sonic Heroes 2 though, once was more than enough. There are things that make this game rot, but that isn't it. Here's something I think the designers did right. This game has a gorgeous visual style, with spectacular cartoony landscapes and textures. The graphics aren't that great, but the look of your surroundings is almost constantly nostalgic. There are 7 zones each with 2 levels, and often the first act doesn't look nearly as awesome as the second act, but it's better than having both acts look the same, and I easily prefer this style to this silly realism thing. It also helps to see all sorts of things from the Genesis era suddenly made 3D that Sonic Adventure didn't have. The only things I'll complain about is that most of the enemies don't look very tough until near the end of the game, though some of the bosses are epic as hell, and for some reason the character models are so ridiculously shiny it looks like they bathed in varnish or something. And this is just a little thing, but Sonic's torso is so small that when he stands still his arms hang straight down and his fingers almost touch the ground. I've always thought that looked pretty odd, but whatever. The idea of switching between characters is pretty innovative. But there are plenty of other things that drag this game down because so much focus was put into that. For one thing, the physics of the Genesis games that were still somewhat present in Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 are now completely gone. No longer will your collective momentum make you soar with flair and majesty. Watch this. That's about as close as it gets. Now, I can understand Sega doing this because if Sonic could bridge any gap just by jumping while moving fast enough, there would be no reason to play as Tails. In fact, the spin dash was taken away so that you can't use that to pull off any crazy stunts. This makes it more fair for the other characters with their own functions, but it still hurts. Another thing, this game has a lot of things that play the game for you, like cannons and speed boosters and ramps and hoops and tracks. Sometimes even the road propels you forward without you having to do anything. Some things like this have been present even in the Genesis games, but there's so damn much of it here. There is platforming and some pretty unique ideas, but this game plays itself like a third of the time. There's just too many things that propel you automatically for the sake of watching the spectacle of Sonic running fast. Also, this game is horrendously linear. Critics actually liked that because it made this game easier to follow, and they didn't want to get lost or anything like that in a big, scary 3D environment. To me, this is bullshit. Sonic should have some amount of exploration no matter what. It should never be a narrow track. There are some roomy areas and a couple of alternate routes here and there, but not enough to flesh out these beautiful worlds as they just whisk by. These levels are huge, yet there aren't enough points where you can go wherever you want. You are almost constantly confined to a small amount of space and need to go in a certain direction to get from point A to point B. You know, like a car on a highway, because that's all Sonic is, right? For me, this makes it feel less like an epic journey through a vast, beautiful world and more like a glorified obstacle course. Now, I do like obstacle courses, and this one is pretty fun, but it isn't that elevated, and while I do think these teams are a cool idea, I think there's so much more they could have done with it to conquer any challenge instead of going through a narrow obstacle course where you're cut off from almost everything around you. Honestly, it's like a carnival ride more than anything else, like a party game. It's a really cool party game, but not a great game, period. One thing that gets really old really fast is the use of other teams, though. While I do think the teams were an interesting new idea, you can't just beat the game with one team, no. You have to beat the game 4 frickin' times, going through the same levels in the same order, and it gets really repetitive. Honestly, it wouldn't be so bad if that was because you need to do this in order to collect the emeralds like in the adventure games, but that isn't the case this time. This game has special stages, just like the Genesis games did. Even if you manage to beat this game with all 4 teams, you still need to access and beat the special stages and collect the emeralds. What's funny about this is exactly what fans wanted instead of automatically finding the emeralds in the story. And you know what? These stages rock. They're actually pretty cool and fun. They're obviously heavily inspired by the special stages of Sonic 2, and they translate well into this new game. I mean, the physics are hard, and it's really easy to throw yourself out of whack, but I'm glad they tried. But while it would be great if the only requirements were to beat this game once and collect the emeralds as whoever the hell you want to, you still need to beat it with all the teams. Why? You know what else really hurts? I know some of you who aren't that familiar with this game are probably wondering, well, wouldn't you be missing out on important parts of the story if you only played with some of the characters and not all of them? That's the thing. There is no story. Well, there is a tiny smidge of it here and there, but all it really boils down to is this. Metal Sonic evolves and thinks he's too good for Dr. Robotnik, so he locks him in a closet, and Robotnik calls Team Chaotix under the guise of a customer to come rescue him. Metal Sonic disguises himself as a doctor and draws the attention of Sonic & Co. The 4 teams run around like crazy, occasionally bumping into each other and eventually all meeting up in the same location on Metal Sonic's flagship to witness his rise to absolute power as he transforms into the coolest clusterfucker I have ever seen in a video game. So Metal Sonic locks Eggman in a closet, Sonic and friends run really fast, and they all fight Metal Sonic. That's it. This plot, while it may sound a bit interesting, does not need to be deeply explored. There is no character development at all, even considering all the new characters shown here, and if you were to play through the whole thing as only one team, you really wouldn't be missing much. The dialogue isn't exclusive to the cutscenes though. While you're playing, the characters interact with each other frequently. Some of the dialogue is okay, but a lot of it is annoying. As for the characters, it isn't simply their presence that bothers me. I don't mind that they're there. Most of them just aren't that deep or likable because the story and dialogue are just so thin. Because we're Sonic heroes? Jeez, Sonic, I never took you to be such a blatant narcissist. Some of the voices are good, some of them aren't. I like Knuckles, Amy, Shadow, Rouge, Omega, Eggman, Metal, and Vector, and I kinda like Sonic here, but not much. There are only 3 bits of dialogue in this game that I actually find engaging. First, there's this scene where Shadow, who doesn't remember anything, finds an android that looks like himself, leading him to question his own existence, and Rouge shows that she cares. At the end of Team Dark's story, upon finding thousands of Shadow androids, she confides in Omega and admits that she doesn't believe this is a real Shadow after all, and assumes that he really did die at the end of SA2. Omega comforts her in his own special way, insisting that the original must still exist, and sets off to find him. That is very interesting stuff. The other bit of dialogue I like is...
Sorry, I forgot to pay the electric bill for the office.
That makes me laugh every time. Some might think such a simplistic story is the right way to go, and that might be true in this game's case. If you didn't need to play with all the teams, it's not like they have anything interesting or unique to contribute to this game. Espio turns invisible, and most of these characters have slightly different functions than the corresponding members of other teams, and Team Chaotix has some barely interesting side quests, but that's it. If you were to play with only one team, you really wouldn't be missing anything that would otherwise give the game more depth, unless you played with Team Rose, if only because their levels are way too short. But whatever. As for the controls, it's so easy to zoom around because the controls are more sensitive than in the adventure games, but I don't see this as a problem. I was easily able to adapt to these wacky physics. The camera's okay, but it should not be this hard to stay alive most of the time. Heroes is pretty challenging, but not too unforgiving. Remember how much I said I liked grinding in SA2? A lot of people hate it here, and they especially despise Rail Canyon. I honestly don't know why. I assume it's because I can't stop sending themselves down a bottomless pit when trying to jump from rail to rail, but again, I don't have a hard time playing this stage, so I can't speak for them. I really can't. I'm actually surprised to hear so many people say they have a hard time beating this stage, let alone grinding at all. One more thing I don't get. Why do people hate Omega so much? I understand if they don't fall in love with him, but why do they hate him? I suppose they feel threatened because they think he's supposed to be Gamma's replacement and not his successor. They think he has zero personality and nothing to fight for other than his selfish desire for revenge against Robotnik, and I have to admit, he isn't as special as Gamma, at least not yet, but over time he shows a surprising amount of depth and becomes easier to sympathize with. I love this game's soundtrack. Not as much as that of SA1, but overall it's a huge improvement over SA2's soundtrack. There are some violent bursts of rock here and there, but most of these tracks are very upbeat and feel like there's a party going on. Some of these tunes are downright jolly. The overall tone changes frequently but appropriately, and every single track easily fits the stage it's in. The thing is, Sonic Heroes kinda sucks, but it isn't simply because of the team gimmick. I honestly don't think the game would be any better without it. Sonic Heroes is a good time waster. The settings are nostalgic and it's pretty fun, but there's an overwhelming amount of scripted events and the characters in general are not very involving. The teammates are an interesting concept that was well executed, but the level designs are very claustrophobic and simplistic. Even though I don't like having to beat the game 4 times before finally going super and fighting Metal Sonic one last time, if you do enjoy this game, there is plenty of replay value. I have kept my copy all these years, but only to pass the time when I have absolutely nothing else to do and am in need of a cheap thrill to entertain myself for a little while. Here's my final verdict. Sonic Heroes is barely worth playing. Whether or not it's worth renting or buying is up to you. It does suck, but not because of the teammate gimmick. There are plenty of other things to hate in this game. Next time, the return of that guy you love to hate, Shadow the Hedgehog. Toodles!
That was pretty tough. Too bad it's all over. For you!
no use. But why can't I defeat you?
Because we're Sonic Heroes. Anytime you want a rematch, just let me know. I'll be waiting.